Welcome back to another episode of the Dish TV. I'm Renita Malhotra-Hora, Head of Marketing and Communications at SRI International, and very excited to have with me today is Shari Golan, who is the President of SRI Education. Hi, Shari.
Hi there, Renita. Thanks for having me.
SRI Education is so different to any other part of the Institute, right? I mean, there is so much great work that you guys do when it comes to research and policy studies, evaluations, assessment development. What is it about SRI Education, firstly, that makes it stand out from the rest of SRI International?
SRI Education does research and policy studies, evaluations. We develop assessments and technical assistance, but we do all of that to reduce barriers and optimize outcomes and ensure educational equity for all children, youth, and families.
Can you give me examples? Can you sort of draw out for me specifically what kinds of problems are being addressed by the Education Division?
We focus on questions and topics that inform better teaching and deeper learning and access to future careers, as well as the behavior and social emotional well-being of students and educators. We do this in a variety of domains, subject matter areas, as well as how to better support various populations, whether they're educators, students, or families. And so some of those areas where we're trying to learn about ways to better improve outcomes for children and students are early learning, STEM and computer science, career and technical education, including alternative college and career pathways, digital and tech-supported learning. We also do a lot of work focused on rural education and supporting students in those settings. We focus on teaching quality and school reform and evidence-based practices. And we focus on supporting students with disabilities. We have done that for decades. And we have a growing program focused on supporting multilingual learners. We don't only do rigorous research and formative research, but we're really excited that we also provide technical assistance that is informed by research and evidence. And that way we are trying to translate the research and get it out in the field. But we also try to share findings and make them relatable to the needs of educators and families through some of our blogs. We have a couple of blogs we'd love people to check out. One is the studentbehaviorblog.org, where we share a lot of resources about supporting students' well-being, mental health, and behavior, as well as the families and educators who work with youth. And the other is the college and career pathways blog that we have. That has a lot of great information for supporting students on those college and career pathways.
So I'd love to know more about whatever you can tell me about our methodological, if I'm pronouncing that right, methodological research and, the other tools and things that we have developed and employ to provide this technical assistance. I think you were going there a little bit earlier. You're going to give me some examples.
So as I mentioned, we do different types of work. So one example is that SRI was helping the New Teacher Center look at their new teacher induction model. Often when students get a new teacher, they can lose several months of learning as these new teachers get acclimated to their new roles and responsibilities and the content and managing the classroom. And so this model is to help those teachers start implementing more effective practices sooner. And we did this large scale up of this particular model to see how well it could work. And we worked with some of 5 of the largest school districts across the nation. And we did that random assignment, and we made sure that we saw whether there was fidelity of implementation. Through doing this study, We did identify, changes in teacher practice. So that was very promising. But we also identified there were some challenges in trying to scale that up with fidelity, and provided formative feedback to the designer, who then used that information to strengthen their program. The impact of that is that we think about 1.8 million students who are impacted by the 25,000 teachers that this organization serves are getting now, better teaching from their new teachers because of the work we did.
When you sent me your notes, you also had a TA example, and you mentioned the Appalachia program, which I know has been, pretty large for the education group. So tell us about that.
So SRI leads the Regional Education Laboratory in Appalachia. It's a 5-year program that is a contract through the Institute for Education Sciences in the U.S. Department of Education. And through this center, SRI researchers provide research, training, coaching, and technical assistance to 4 states, to educators and administrators in 4 states. So Kentucky, Tennessee, Virginia, and West Virginia. And we are answering their questions. So we're trying to address high leverage issues of practice that they have brought partnerships together that they care very deeply about. And often it is focused on trying to address issues impacting traditionally underserved communities. One of the things in REL Appalachia is we are working with districts that are seeing a lot of issues from the opioid crisis. So a lot of students and families, and then secondary trauma, in educators associated with the opioid crisis. And there is a program called Handle with Care that is focused on and is evidence-based to help educators support students who've experienced trauma. And we did a lot of work in that area as well. So we help not just through webinars and training and coaching, but we put out a lot of documents and toolkits that various educators and folks at the state level can use. And I think over the last 4 years, we've created almost 1,000 tools and documents, but they're all focused on providing direct, actionable resources for educators.
Shari, what about the innovation work that you mentioned up front, that you said you want to highlight also the fact that we're doing quite a bit of education innovation? Can you tell us about that?
What is really exciting at SRI for us education researchers is that we do get to collaborate with other parts of SRI, including SRI's Speech Technology and Research Lab, the STAR Lab, to look at how we might be able to collect information about adult speech directed at young children. And the reason we wanted to do this is that young children, the way they learn the most, is from what they hear from adults and that interaction. And that often there are a lot of opportunities that can be missed where young children aren't hearing as many words or complex words, or getting chances to respond to open-ended questions that ask for critical thinking, or adults maybe aren't pausing and letting children try to formulate responses. Lots of different ways that adults really can support that learning, important learning when children are young. And so we wanted a system that could provide feedback about those opportunities and when maybe adults could do more of those behaviors, or where they are actually doing them successfully. So we called this technology Smart Talk. And it basically looks at those types of important behaviors that we were talking about. And then we've been using AI to look at how we can create dashboards to provide feedback. And again, we've had a lot of success with this. And we are now trying to scale up and look at its use in more early learning settings as well as in home settings, and getting feedback on our dashboard approach.
Shari, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. That was such a wealth of information, and I am definitely looking forward to doing a deep dive with some of the researchers on your team to study and talk about these areas a little more closely.
Well, thank you for having me, and I'm sure that folks in my team would appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about their work.
Thanks, Shari. That's Shari Golan. She is the president of SRI Education. So that's it for today's episode of The Dish TV. Stay tuned for more exciting and innovative research coming out of SRI International.